Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your week's rundown and market recap for Friday, July 5th. It's the day after the 4th of July, and a really nice trading day. We had the jobs number this morning. We'll talk a little bit about that. But, it's funny in my Wall Street career, at this point, I'm almost getting as much time in as a retail trader as I was an institutional trader. But, these are things that I've heard throughout my career, and you learn after a while that it's not always the case. Right now, clear what I'm referring to is when we have either a half day before a holiday or a full day like today after a holiday. The half day was obviously pre-holiday, but when you have a full day and clearly not everybody on Wall Street comes in for the day is actually in the physical office, people sometimes write off the day and they're like, it's a good day to take off, which agree. If you want to take off a day, they're not bad days to take off. However, they're often really good trading days. That's not 100% of the time, but there's volatility because of just that. If not every market participant is going to be in there, sometimes it will really create a pretty good trading opportunity. And I think that's what we had today. We also had a really fun day on Wednesday as well. So it's a good reason to actually show up. It's something that we do all the time. I don't take off a lot of time. If I do go on vacation, I usually am working a little bit remotely. And that's also what people do on days like this too. So it becomes a little bit of a myth. And again, I think the people who take off the day, they're the ones who say it. Oh, nothing's going to happen today, so I'm going to take off. But hey, really good days to make a little bit of money and to scalp. Sometimes you don't have to add positions, but I'm going to go over today's option activity, which I thought was really good. I thought the option activity gave some really good signals, and that's how it's actually been the last couple weeks. I would say the option activity is providing some good looking stuff in terms of just either if you want to day trade and scalp some things, or if you're looking to actually put on some swing trades. And I'll go over a couple of those trades that we saw today. Let me go over. So again, I'm going to recap the performance of what happened today, what transpired today. I'll bring up the jobs numbers as well. But first things first, if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, and if this is one of the first times that you're watching this video, sometimes I don't actually describe what we do on a daily basis and why we exist, right? So really what my goal of the Tribeca Trade Group is to do is, we're not like a lot of other services that you see on Twitter, and I know there's a lot of subscription services now, and that's why I'm going to put this out on Twitter this weekend, just to give an idea of what we're doing. Like things that you'll never hear me say, right, which is on the bottom of this. I will never say like, hey, I flagged this for you unless we're joking around about something. I never understood while people say that. I hear that phrase on Twitter a lot. If I like the order so much, I'll take it, right? I mean, there's no reason why people will put out 20 different trades and say on the 3 or 4 that work, oh, I flagged this for you, right? So I don't do any of that. You'll never hear me say, sales, again, these are all deceptive sales things. When you hear somebody says, hey, if it breaks this level, it's going higher. Well, duh, yeah, that's what it's going to do. If it breaks a level, it is going to go higher. So these are things that I don't get for the life of me. I've never heard anybody in institutional trading talk about things like this. You can earn potential profits, again, so on and so forth. I don't do any of that. Basically, what I've created at the Tribeca Trade Group is really a collaborative, number 2 on the list on the top is collaborative trading room with experienced traders. I wanted to create something that people can really build from. Even myself, like I enjoy having really great banter with a very experienced group of traders that we have in the room, all building off of one another, providing really good trade ideas and what people are trading and how they're trading it. Everybody posts what they're doing live, and that really kind of just adds a really robust system and trading room that we've got. And again, my what I like to do is provide market color, right? I mean, this is what I used to do as an institutional trader too, to the clients that I was covering. Is you try to give them the best market color that's out there. That helps my trading as well. And then, of course, what I love to do is, provide consistent setups, right? I mean, I'm more of a trend and momentum trader, and my favorite setups are a name that's been in consolidation for a long time and that's breaking out of consolidation. I also love to continuously buy dips and uptrends, right? When names that are have been in an uptrend for a long time, forget about their valuation. These are technical trades, but names that have kind of sitting back into like a 20-day moving average, and then finding support there, right? I mean, those are a couple of my favorite setups, and so I'll really look for option activity when that happens, into consolidation, not the straight up momentum, call buying that we see, but that we also see on the tape. You kind of have to try to avoid those names, but really on something that looks like it's smart option activity. Remember again that the option activity is most of the time coming from hedge funds or big institutions, and not all those guys are doing well for the year. So you really have to be picky and choosy. And the technicals that we use that I go over a lot. The TTG market webs, which really are a gift that keeps on giving, in terms of support and resistance levels. So anyway, so that's my little mission statement. If anybody has any questions about that, or questions about membership options questions, you can email me cfromhertz at tribecatrading.com or at gmail.com. You could use whatever email that you like. But that's just bottom line, some of the things that we do on a daily basis if you're not familiar with our group. So let's talk about what happened today. Big moves in the jobs. So I mentioned I'll talk a little bit about the jobs number. Let's bring up the economics. So the big thing today, and went over this a little bit on the midday recap of the option flow and the jobs number, but the number came in better than expected. What's interesting to me is every time we seem to have one of these job reports that miss, remember last month was a surprise to the downside, it seems like the next month comes in very strong and kind of makes up for that miss. So 224 versus 160. Again, that ADP number that came out earlier in the week was completely bogus in terms of what they were estimating. Private payrolls were strong. The silver lining in this report was that the hourly earnings, if you're continuing to kind of think of this as good news, bad news, good news, that type of thing, because everybody's focused on whether or not the Fed is going to cut rates, then this is a positive in those terms, because it gives the Fed less ammo to, well, I'm not even going to say raise rates, because that's not going to happen, but it could justify why they could do a rate cut. How does this look? I don't think this picture changed too much in terms of what the market is pricing in. I don't think this budged at all. It was earlier today. It dropped to 92% for July, but the market is still pricing in a cut. So I don't know. This doesn't. I've said this now for a couple weeks. This doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I agree with what Josh Brown had to say on CNBC earlier. It just doesn't make any sense that why we need rate cuts when the jobs number is strong. We are getting, we've definitely had a few bouts of weakness, and there's global weakness in a lot of stats that are coming out. But our numbers are not that weak, and I don't think that they justify a rate cut. But clearly the market is thinking otherwise. There was also a semi-annual report that came out by the Fed today stating that they would be there if needed, which we know about. And again, that's my perspective, is that it's great to hear that they're there if needed. I just don't know why that we're pricing in 2 or 3 cuts. It doesn't seem like the market is showing, at least where I live too, not only looking at statistics, but living in the New York area, New York City, it just doesn't seem like people are on vacation. People are busy taking vacations. It doesn't seem like people are cutting back anything. Those would be reasons for cuts. Anyway, I'll move on because I can certainly talk about that for a while today. So let's talk about the performance, right? So what this caused today was, yeah, a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in things because the dollar went up when we have a stronger than expected economics report. That caused the dollar to excuse me. So the dollar went up. That caused bonds to go down. They opened up down 1.3%. TLT did. Also gold. So these were some really big moves, and of course that upsets the apple cart with the yield trade that we've been seeing. A big move into defensive securities and utilities, rate sensitive, and those are going to get a bit of a shock. But what we did see was the dip. One of the main themes of the day was, we started to go lower. We kind of kept going lower till about 10 o'clock today. We took out a virgin point of control. And the main thing or main theme is that buyers are coming back into this market. We're seeing that. So again, it appears that, and this is right around, I guess, about 10:30 is where we reversed, kind of did a V recovery, and headed back to above the 9:30 open. So pretty good, and above this virgin point of control. I did mention that there was one further down. We almost got to that. Believe it or not, we almost got to that virgin point of control. So we did recover, and it's nice to see a nice trading range for the day too, right? Not where we're just kind of chopping around, something where we can actually, position a bit. So what performed best out of, kind of just highlight a couple things here on my chart. I'm not going to spend, or on my spreadsheet here, I'm not going to spend a ton of time. The metals and mining were really strong again. Gold miners, which did finish down on the day, but look at the recovery in this area. And XME actually finished, I dumped my XME trade on Wednesday, just cutting down, a little bit of exposure. Retail was very strong. We saw a lot of retail buying. So let's pull up a couple of these charts because I didn't get a chance to look at them. But I'll bring you through some of the call buying in just a second in retail. But there's a little buying in Macy's for next week. Yeah, this chart is not jumping out to me, but it was very strong. And I don't have a catalyst. Maybe I'm just not thinking clearly. But for why retail was so strong today, that was one of your best performing sectors, XRT. Solar names, also, again, I'm just looking at the performance of like what names got bought into weakness. The FANG stocks, I think, were a little bit of a story today. That was something pre-market. What I generally do is try to call out a couple different things that I think might be interesting. I think the FANG stocks, as much as I've been a downer on the FANG stocks, and think that there's been better places to allocate money to in 2019. The FANG stocks are starting to look interesting, and maybe they do that run into earnings that sometimes they end up doing. On the downside, we did see some put buying in the biotech group. This seems to be whenever Trump starts to talk about, or just any political, doesn't have to be Trump, could be somebody else, talking about drug pricing, these groups kind of get hit a little bit for a couple days. And there was some put buying that happened in both IBB and XBI. That was probably the sharpest put buying that we saw, and that was early on. Like I mentioned, the FANG stocks, they all did pretty good today from the open. The best was Google. Also Amazon, which I got long. Remember Amazon, I unwound a long Amazon trade for profits on Wednesday. I got back into a trade for next week call spread and hit two targets in that today. So that worked out pretty well. Netflix. So just to go over these charts really quickly, I don't want to spend too much time here. But Amazon, it is trying to form that portion of, here's the cup, here's the handle. And as long as it is above 1937 for me, I'm bullish Amazon, right? So why 1937? That's the top of value, and that could be trying to take that next leg higher. The other two that I really like, even though Google was the one that outperformed the most today, but Facebook also is above value. Netflix, I tell you. Netflix is one of those stocks that have been, it seems like it's gotten to this level before, and it's went the other way. So, we'll see what this could do. I would like to see some big heavy call buying in there too, which would maybe get me into a trade. But it is at the top of the range. Very choppy stock. Really has gone nowhere since February. Right, made all of its gains in the first month of the year, but it is possible that this thing could go. So anyway, that's the FANG stocks. The other group that really got going again, where they bought the dip again, was in the software group. Again, a lot of these groups got hit. Like I saw Twilio was down 2% today. That actually came back and finished up on the day, 1.3% over the day. Coupa Software continues to roll, up 1.7% for the day. Intraday move up 3%. That's a name I'm long in my long-term account. MDB, which I think people were a little bit disappointed at the end of the week, but it seems to be a name that you could buy in the dips. Did finish up on the day. Just moving over to this other group that I've gotten here. Look at Roku. That was a name that a couple of traders caught in the room today. Really nice, up 4.9%. Also Snap. I don't know why I don't have that highlighted, but let's go ahead and look at Roku and Snap. So Roku looks like the dip was bought. So, talking about my style, move into 50-day moving average, got bought, fell into support, and now back into value. Nice move there. And then the one that I really like this technically, and we continue to see call buying in Snap. But I've profiled this a couple times. You probably heard me talk about Snap a couple times now. But I really like this setup. It took out this version point of control. So I've got a post on this on Twitter. I said what to do with this. I said I would wait till the price gets back above. And we are back above here and above value. So if you like Snap, 1464 is your bogey. And notice we've got a version point of control. So a high level of buyers and sellers way up here, up at 1780. So that would be something I think pretty good to shoot for. Keep in mind you've got earnings in a couple weeks, 723. But one of my favorite looking setups, technical setups at this point. So that should be highlighted. Software, we talked about those names already. I don't know, this is wrong. A lot of, I don't know if I could find too many trends there in the Chinese internet names. JD.com is down 1.5%, was one of the worst performers. IQ also down 2.6%. All right, so that's some names. Let me just go over, again, I'll try to be brief here. But to go over this week's performance, how did we do overall, first of all, for the week? Pretty good. Pretty good week. Remember last week the performance of the S&P was just down slightly. Was good, turned up at the end of the week. But SPY finished up, and again, this is 5-day summary, so this is going to catch Friday of last week because of the holiday. But up 2.3% for SPY. Small caps did pretty well, up 2%. Qs did well as well. Transports strong. Gold was down for the week, down 0.5%. TLT just fractionally down. In terms of sectors, sorry, as my Word documents all over the place. Solar was your best performing. Also, software very strong. Big weeks for these groups. Financials, so pretty good market breadth. You've got solar in here, software, financials, banks, REITs, both financials classified, telecom, consumer discretion. All these groups over 2%. Even staples and utilities were up 2%. The laggards were some material names or commodity names. XOP, oil and gas, down another 1%, continues to be lagging. Steel names were also down a little bit. Gold miners were flat for the week. International, Turkey and Greece. This Greece ETF, how much is this thing? If you're not familiar with this, which is pretty startling to me, But the Greek ETF is, I think, one of the best performing countries in 2019, believe it or not. Yeah, up 42% year to date is the Greek ETF. Look at that. Stellar. Very strong, very strong. Let's just see what the Turkey chart looks like too, because that was one of your best performers. In international, the only thing that I'm really long right now is FM, frontier markets. Keep in mind this is not dividend adjusted. That was the reason for this. So if you look at this non-dividend adjusted, you got a really nice move here in this frontier markets that I've been long now for, I think, about a little bit over a month. And so far I've positioned the right way. I'm in January calls, and I'm also in stock itself. Right, let me check that. Is that January? No, I'm in December. I'm in December 31 calls. And again, nice move here. All right, so I told you I would go through today's option activity. I kind of classify this in a couple different ways. Paychecks, which again appears to be like a jobs day. I think we saw puts on last jobs day when the number was weaker than expected, but I've seen paychecks calls happen. Whenever there's a strong jobs report, they buy calls in this. That is not something new. Snap, I've already mentioned that one. We continue to see Snap calls. It seems like they are playing that one, mainly short-term stuff. But every now and then we do see January calls, which is what we saw later this afternoon. I've got highlighted in gray all the retail stuff. Keep in mind, Costco, I don't know what the catalyst is, as I mentioned earlier. Costco does have same store sales number. Remember, they report their sales numbers, monthly sales numbers. They report every month, as you would think if I said monthly. They report those next week on the 10th. So it could be why they bought a little bit of calls there for their numbers. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a boost with the with 4th of July. A few other names I've got highlighted. Airlines. I did check. These were not crossed. Sometimes big blocks of calls go up and they're against shares. But AAL calls, and there was also some UAL calls as well. We're getting to the time where some of this could be earnings related. But UAL, so for me, I'm a trend trader. So it's below the 200-day moving average. Of course, you could just follow option activity, but I like to have something to trade against. I guess you could trade against the 50-day moving average, but this is still in range. So maybe a name to watch, AAL. Also UAL, which I think is a better looking chart. That name is above value. So call buying in airlines, a little bit different. What else do we see? Then a couple other trades that I think are really interesting. And I did add this trade today. I mentioned I added a couple swings today. Of course, made sure that I took some targets and some other things. Zillow. So we've talked about this name before, but I tell you, it looks pretty good. It's going to be hitting this earnings gap, but that's at 51. But it's also above value. Again, once these things are just above value, very easy to kind of put your stop. If it doesn't work, it'll be a paper cut, right? Not a big loss. So 46.04 is basically is my stop. I said I think my stop is going to be, 46.99. I said my stop on this one will be 46.90. I'm long stock. I did look at November options in Zillow. They were just too wide. They were like about 80 cents wide. It's just too much to spend on the width of the bid ask, to get in, and you're already down. You're going to be down when you get into something like that where the options are almost $1 wide. Then just finally, there was one or two other names that I had highlighted. I think that's it. More SE calls. I am long a little bit of SE. That seems like continuous call flow there as well the last few weeks. So that's it. I could go over a bunch of other names, but the video is already 25 minutes long. So what to do with this market? There was a great comment at the end of the room, which I think people are starting to feel a little bit. We've had several days, even though I think the market did finish down on the day. What did SPY finish for the day? Just fractionally down. Still, I think people are starting to. We've had a pretty decent run. We go back if we go back to the S&P chart. Because no one wants to get caught when we do have a little bit of volatility to the downside. What I'm really trying to do is just be very mindful on my position size here. But we're in price discovery. Being in price discovery is not a bad thing. You just want to be overexposed. Again, video for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendations. But in my opinion, just don't want to get way over the tips of your skis. Things that you could do. Well, I'm not going to go into that. You have to be a member of that. But we did talk about that at the end of the day. There's definitely different strategies that you could do especially if your positions are not just stock but options. There's a whole bunch of different strategies that you can help kind of lock in some profits. All right, guys, so we'll leave it there. I hope everybody has an awesome weekend. And if you are not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, please check us out. Check out the room. Happy to have you stay for a month, and if you don't like it, can give you part of your membership feedback. But you can email me and we can discuss that. But would love to see people try it out and see what they think. And based on how we're running the room, I think we've got an excellent room going, and really proud of what we got going. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you on Monday.